Okay, so we'll get started. Thank you everyone for joining us. This is our first of 3 webinars that we'll host. And these are just meant to kind of give you guys an idea of how the application process works in terms of the fellowship, and then also what the specific roles are which the fellows have here at their respective companies associated with MCP. So as we get started, we'll just have the presenters introduce themselves. So I'll go first. My name is Michael Ryan. I'm a first-year fellow at Biogen in the Safety and Benefit Risk Management Department, which is Biogen's fancy way of saying global pharmacovigilance.
Hi, my name is Emily Roses, and I am a Global Clinical Supply Fellow at Pfizer, and I'm in supply chain.
Hi everyone, my name is Melissa Laracy. I am a first-year fellow at Biogen working in the Global Medical Writing Department.
And I don't think that Mike has been able to join yet, so Kate, if you want to introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi guys, I'm Kate Newman. I'm a first-year fellow at Biogen in Regulatory Advertising and Promotion.
Hi everyone, my name is Olivia Weiss. I'm a first-year fellow at Biogen as well, and I am in the Reg Affairs Trial Master File Clinical Trial Application position.
Hi everyone, my name is Afifa. I am a first-year Global Regulatory Affairs Fellow at Sanofi Genzyme.
All right, so tonight we're going to go over, like I said, just the roles of the different fellows that we have on the call here and their respective roles at their programs. And then we'll talk a little bit about the MCP Fellowship Program as a whole, what companies they're associated with, what functional areas they work in. And then we'll briefly touch on the upcoming webinars that we have planned for you guys, and we'll give you guys a chance to ask questions as well. So just to get started, this kind of paints a picture of all the different functional areas that the fellowship offers positions in. So you can see that there's a wide variety here that PharmDs have the ability to get experience in, and it's really something that we don't learn a lot about in school in terms of different opportunities where we can use our degrees as pharmacists. So these are all different functional areas where MCP has actual fellowships in with different companies. And as you look at the drug development process, you can kind of see how each particular functional area touches what phase of the clinical trial. So there are some that span the whole drug development process, and there are others that are more focused on one particular area. So depending on what your interests are, this is a good opportunity to really see drug development from beginning to end. So now we'll talk about the specific roles in the industry for PharmDs.
Hi, this is Emily Roses, and I'm going to talk about clinical research first. So if you're interested in drug development and you want to know how a drug goes from a molecule all the way to a medicine in a bottle or injectable, clinical research might be for you. If you want to be involved in the operational aspects of clinical trials, like developing the protocol and the inclusion criteria, exclusion criteria, endpoints, and any other facet of a clinical trial. Additionally, they'll do a lot of operational work, site feasibility to see, can we do this clinical trial in this country? You'll report on data that is obtained from the studies as well, and develop statistical models and plans. Additionally, you'll have input into the medical oversight or the monitoring of the different sites, and you'll manage study setup and maintenance all the way to closeout, so you can see a full clinical trial from start to finish. Next slide. Clinical supply chain is the fellowship that I am in at Pfizer, and the the role is very unique. It's essentially a project management role where you are managing the clinical supplies for clinical trials. So you will be providing the investigational products to the clinical trials all around the world. In the process, you have a lot of input into the protocol, particularly in the drug treatment section and the investigational product section. You are going to talk about the handling and administration of investigational products, and forecast and manage the investigational products and figure out how much will be needed around the world and any risks that may occur.
Hi everyone, so this is Melissa. I'm going to be telling you about quality assurance and also about medical writing. So if you're working in quality assurance, you're going to be responsible for providing good manufacturing different manufacturing, testing, packaging, and labeling vendors that you use for different aspects throughout your trials. You could also be responsible for supporting the process and documentation of investigational products and their use at clinical sites when you have trials ongoing. Oh, can you guys still hear me? If anyone can hear me speaking right now, can you leave a comment? Check the YouTube link. Now okay. All right, great. So I'll just do a quick recap there. So you can be responsible for conducting reviews of internal and external processes, finding and approving different vendors that you use, supporting documentation of investigational products and their use during trials at clinical sites. You could also be responsible for approving the release of raw materials, excipients, and active pharmaceutical ingredients and drug products for use during clinical trials. Another thing is managing investigations and complaints for investigational product-related issues that may arise during the course of a study. So in general, this last bullet is more just of promoting a culture with a focus on quality assurance across the whole organization. So that's going to be another main focus for you to be responsible for. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is clinical documentation and medical writing. So these two groups are responsible for working with cross-functional development teams. So you'll really be working with people all across the country, all across the company in different departments to produce both clinical and regulatory documents. So this can include things such as regulatory responses, clinical study reports, protocols, investigator brochures, and then if anything comes up during the course of a trial, you may have to work on amendments or updates to all of those documents as well. So for a PharmD in this department, your roles could be from preparing documents needed to be submitted to health authorities so that you can initiate studies in the first place. You're also going to be responsible for preparing reports of studies that have been run and completed so that you can submit them to regulatory agencies to help you in getting a submission approved. You're also going to help with preparing clinical summary documents that you're going to need before you can get a market approval. So this would include things like clinical overviews, clinical summaries of efficacy and safety, briefing documents that you submit to agencies like the FDA or the EMA, and investigator brochures. And then you're also going to be doing some work on multifunctional teams to help develop the content that goes into each one of these documents. So you'll usually have we have teams such as study management teams, who you have usually one member sit from each of the different departments that are involved in the study to give different input from all of the different departments as you work through the trial. You're also going to ensure that the documents meet the regulatory and quality requirements that are needed. And you're going to manage document preparation timelines, writing, review, revision, and approval for the entire process. So for medical writing, you're really going to be involved throughout the whole process of the drug approval process, from preclinical to clinical, and then after, you'll also be involved in post-marketing studies as well.
So Michael is going to go ahead now.
Are you all online, Mike?
Guys, sorry I missed the introduction. What's that? Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Hear you.
Okay, perfect, great. Sorry, I apologize. I missed the introduction at the beginning. Clearly, I've been having some technical difficulties with this. But just a brief introduction. My name is Michael Wells. I'm the first year medical affairs MSL for rare diseases fellow at Sanofi Genzyme. So it's only appropriate that I speak about medical affairs, obviously. That's kind of my bread and butter, if you will. So medical affairs, kind of as the slide indicates, there are kind of a couple things going on with the slide. So if you look to the right, functional areas, clearly medical affairs is a very broad term that encompasses a lot of different areas within the pharmaceutical industry. And, I think that this is a very, very diverse group that you deal with. And I think that at each company, medical affairs is defined differently, depending on where you go. But in general, I think that these different functional areas are listed here are pretty much what you're going to see. And then if you focus to the left and look at kind of what the PharmD roles are, and you read through what each of those represent, it becomes kind of clear that there's a common theme between what medical affairs PharmDs are responsible for, and that theme is really communication. So whether that be communicating, scientific knowledge in the MSL role to KOLs or key opinion leaders, being the physician, to user medications or big stakeholders in disease states that the medications treat, or whether that be from a publication standpoint, making sure that we communicate our findings in clinical trials or investigator-sponsored studies through publications or through posters or what have you. It's making sure that we are disseminating our scientific knowledge to the broader community, and ensuring that it kind of falls in line with the messages that we want to send, and in both a strategic and compliance standpoint. And so the next slide is what they call real world outcomes. And so I would say synonymous term with this branch of the pharmaceutical industry is what I would refer to, and what I'm sure is the more common term, is HEOR, or health economics and outcomes research. So this is really kind of showing the value of the medication, looking at real world outcomes and showing, obviously clinical trials are much different, than what actually, or not only what, but how the drug is used for in clinical practice. So this is taking information that you gather. It doesn't usually, I would say, I guess, in a post-marketing sense, and showing that not only to the scientific community, but to third-party payers to really try to communicate the value of your drug. And so you're looking at kind of the bullet points that are listed there. There are many opportunities, many different types of ways the PharmDs can get involved, and they interact with a lot of different people. So again, a very diverse role, and there are fellowships that focus specifically on that aspect. So up next will be global commercial strategy. So whoever's ready to take that over, please go ahead. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. This is Kate. So I'm going to talk to you briefly about global commercial strategy. And I guess if you're kind of wondering what that is, it's pretty synonymous with marketing. So the role of the fellows in Global Comstrat are basically to assist on cross-functional teams in really driving the business. So their concern is less with say regulations and more with what they feel the people within the disease state or the community involved wants to see and hear about. So they do a lot of collaboration on developing and refining product value messaging and disease awareness materials. So you'll see them responsible for a lot of the unbranded disease state materials that you see online, especially when companies do have unbranded messaging. They do a lot of market research. They're responsible with developing that research as far as the messaging for the disease states. They deal a lot with competitive intelligence, both globally, regionally, and country brand teams. They also do a really great job of helping to identify those gaps in the market in which the company could potentially take advantage, whether it's developing a new resource for its disease state community or hosting events with public speakers. And their main goal is to gain insight into the strategic roles of various functions within the rare disease businesses. And that goes the whole way through the product's life cycle. So they'll be there from start to finish. And then they'll continue with that brand as it evolves. And next, I'm going to talk to you about U.S. medical payer access. So the PharmD's role as far as this is to provide comprehensive medical education and HEOR solutions to payers. So if you were to think about it, it would kind of be like an MSL to companies like CVS or Blue Cross Blue Shield. So their main role is to develop these relationships with these payers in order to get company products onto the formularies. So they collect their information during engagements with these customers, and then they provide insights to the internal medical teams so that when they present the information to the payers, they can kind of present the best information that they can as to why their products should be in the formularies. So it's really important to have a good understanding of payer models and being well versed in the clinical studies to be able to deliver that message that really speaks to the payers.
Okay, hi everyone, this is Olivia again. So I'm going to talk briefly about regulatory affairs. And that's kind of like a big overarching topic. And so Reg Affairs is mainly responsible for providing strategic regulatory guidance and operational support for the development of commercial programs. So basically, as the fellow, you can take on a lot of roles. A bunch of them are listed here. You can create and compile submissions that go to health authorities. You can lead communications between companies and domestic and or global health authorities, coordinate the development and revision of labeling, review and approve advertising and promotional materials, develop strategies, manage products through their life cycle, and manage regulatory requirements for ongoing and planned clinical trials. And that's more of my area, working with the trial master file. And we touched on this a little bit earlier in the presentation. Another area you can work in is health economics and outcomes research. And those people are mostly responsible for determining and conveying the magnitude of unmet medical needs and also evaluating a product's economic and population health value. So more of what the medication means to people. So as a fellow, you could design health economic models, tools, and reports to create, validate, and communicate product-specific economic value propositions, support innovation and the commercialization of new products, by driving collaborations with medical affairs, R&D, and public policy, and also leverage economic and outcome studies to support marketing and sales.
Hi, everyone. This is Michael again. I'm going to talk to you about drug safety and pharmacovigilance. So basically, there's two aspects to this. The first is if you think about it from a consumer perspective, when an adverse event takes place, it's reported to the company of that product. So, for example, here at Biogen, we'll get adverse events reported to us, and the first thing that takes place is that we make sure we have all the information necessary for this adverse event, and we process it as a case. And that's something that, as you've kind of heard already tonight, the industry is very regulated by not only the FDA, but many different regulatory agencies across the world. And pharmacovigilance is no different. There's a lot of regulations that we have to follow. So when we're processing those cases, we, number one, have to follow those regulations, but number two, we want to make sure that we have enough information to understand that case and recognize if that adverse event was actually related to our product at our specific company. So that's step one. We make sure we get all that information, and that entails reaching out to the providers, reaching out to the patients, and just gathering all the details regarding that event. And then once we have all that information on a single patient level, then it transitions over to what's called aggregate reporting. And this is when you basically put together all of the adverse events that happen for a specific product, and you look at them from a large scale and try to understand, if this product actually caused it, and then where do we want to go from there? Is this something that we need to add to our label as a new adverse event? Is this something that maybe a REMS program has to be established, or a black box warning? Or, if you go further down a little bit, maybe you're talking about having to pull a drug from the market because of an unexpected adverse event. So essentially, on the individual patient level and then on the aggregate level, the goal in drug safety is to make sure that these drugs are safe for the patient. And I think it's pretty obvious that, when you're testing these drugs in clinical trials, it's usually in healthy patients. You're excluding the patients who might experience adverse effects. So now when people out in the real world are taking your product, it's likely that you're going to have all these events that you didn't quite plan for previously. So in PV, you're spending a lot of the time just really looking at that risk-benefit analysis and trying to determine if your product is still safe for the consumer.
Hi everyone, this is Afifa again. I'll be talking about the partnering companies and programs that are a part of the MCPHS Fellowship. There are 9 companies now that are part of the MCPHS Fellowship. There are a variety that are located in the New England area, some outside of Massachusetts even, and a variety of them are recruiting this year. So Sanofi Genzyme is recruiting for two global regulatory affairs positions, global pharmacovigilance, 2 medical communications and rare diseases. We're recruiting for MSL in MS, MSL in rare disease, MS in medical affairs, medical payer access in multiple sclerosis, oncology, and immunology, scientific communications, commercial strategy in rare diseases, regulatory medical writing, in oncology medical affairs, immunology medical affairs, oncology commercial strategy, and that's the bulk. That is all of the ones at Sanofi Genzyme that they will be recruiting for this year. Excuse me, I'm sorry, I'm just getting over a cold, so my voice is a little rough. And at Novartis, there are a variety of positions they are recruiting for this year. Translational clinical oncology, which is clinical operations in oncology, early phase of drug development. Biomarker development, which is general medicine, early phase drug development. Clinical sciences and operations, which explores clinical operations in general medicine, early phase of drug development. And I believe they are recruiting for 2 positions of that. And those are the ones we have been told that they are recruiting for so far. And if there are any changes to anything I'm saying, we will let you know in the future webinars to come. And obviously, it would be updated as we get closer to recruitment season. At Biogen, they are recruiting 2 people for worldwide medical and values-based outcomes, 2 people for regulatory affairs, safety and benefit risk management, 1 person for regulatory affairs, advertising, labeling, and promotion, 1 position for regulatory affairs, focusing more on trial master file and clinical trial applications, global medical writing, and regulatory global labeling. Pfizer is recruiting for clinical supply strategy and management, clinical research pharmacy, quality assurance. Takeda is recruiting for pharmacovigilance and medical information. BD is recruiting 2 positions for global medical affairs in diabetes care and 1 position in clinical marketing for diabetes care. Sanovion is not recruiting this year. Alexion is recruiting for global medical information. We have Agios up there as well, but I am not 100% if they are recruiting or not. But we will definitely give you more information about that in our future webinars when we have more information about it. And if you want to learn more about us or want to stay in touch with us, please visit the MCPHS Residency and Fellowship webpage. You can also follow us on our LinkedIn Student Interest Group. You can stay in touch with everything that's going on, and especially during this time, it's best for applicants to know what is the most updated information. Things change on the daily, so it's good to stay updated and visit these sites frequently. And if you'd like to stay in touch with us, you can you can come to our next webinar, which is more about the program that MCPHS offers and the application process. I highly recommend anyone who is applying this year, planning on attending mid-year this year, interested in the fellowship process at all, even if you're on the fence about it, to really make it a point to attend these webinars. They will be extremely helpful in navigating the process. It can get complicated along with the natural stress that comes along with applying to this exciting new endeavor that you're taking on. So really try to save these dates and stay in touch with us so that you are for sure going to be at these webinars. And you can follow us on social media. You can look into the life of a fellow by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, or LinkedIn. And we also provide whatever information that we think is helpful for our applicants on these mediums. So please follow us. And now we can open the floor for questions. So please feel free to either raise your hand or write something in the chat, and we can pick out accordingly.
So first, I just want to say thank you to all the fellows who joined us tonight. I know it's been a long day, but hang on here for a few more minutes as we get some questions answered. And I'll start off the first couple here. So in terms of these slides getting sent out, I don't think we're going to distribute these slides. However, this actual webinar will be will be live on our YouTube page, and it'll be here. So we will distribute the link to our YouTube page through the social media platforms. So if you want to follow the MFN on any one of those social media platforms, we can distribute the YouTube video. So this will be on there. The upcoming webinars will be on there, and we'll have some other things on there as well. And yes, both the future webinars are going to be covering the application process. We just wanted to have 2 nights to give people a chance to make sure they can attend one of them, because like Afifa said, it's something that, can be a stressful time, but we don't want it to be, and we want to make sure all your questions are answered going into that process. So Afifa, I'm not sure if you can see the questions coming in on YouTube Live, but there's a question specifically for you about the regulatory affairs program at Sanofi, and if it's for 2 years, and if there's any breakdown on what areas you'll be working in.
I actually did not have that link open, so thank you for letting me know about that question. So I actually have a 2-year fellowship at Sanofi Genzyme, and in our fellowship, we have the opportunity to rotate through different areas of regulatory affairs. So currently, my first couple months are focused in on strategy. So that's kind of the functional area of regulatory that I'm exploring currently. Other functional areas that fellows typically explore are CMC and ad promo, and then there's also time for an elective that I could pick, say, if I wanted to go outside of the scope of regulatory and I wanted to try out I wanted to try out maybe commercial, I could give that a go. So there are different options for what I'm interested in as well, given even if it's outside of regulatory.
Awesome. Thank you, Afifa. The next question we have here asks about the different skill sets required for a medical affairs candidate, since they cover so many roles. Michael Wells dropped off the call, so I can answer this one. I think with Med Affairs, one thing to remember is that depending on the role, a lot of times in medical, you serve as the face of the company. So having the ability to, realize that your communication coming out in the field is really portraying, like he said, not only the clinical aspect of the company, but also the strategy of the company. So really being a well-spoken person, having good communication skills is really important. And that goes for most programs across the board. Fellowships are meant to introduce us to the industry, because there's a lot going on. And in addition, it breeds us to have opportunities to learn how to lead projects and manage your time and all those sorts of things. So you're really involved in a number of different ways. So I think that I wouldn't really single it out based on a specific functional area, but just there's a lot of characteristics in candidates that go across the board. If Mike wants to add anything else to the question about characteristics needed for medical affairs positions, feel free to jump in. In the meantime, the next question regarding how the MC.
Yeah, go ahead. To what someone has mentioned previously, but I definitely think depending on the role, again, like we saw before, there are a lot of different areas. Med affairs is very broad, so there are a lot of different areas that one could go or work in within medical affairs. So I would definitely think, with the MSL role, obviously having good interpersonal skills, being able to communicate verbally, because that role kind of entails a lot of presentation. So obviously presentation skills are a big part of that as well. But if you look more towards like the medcom and like the pub side, obviously, you need to be able to write very well and be able to communicate complex scientific information in a way that's understandable to not only physicians but also to the layperson, particularly when you're communicating things that are directed more towards patients as well. So I think there are a lot of different skills. I don't think that you need to have I don't think there's really a blueprint, if you will, for someone who to be successful within medical affairs. But again, kind of the theme of medical affairs being communication. I think whether that be in a written or oral form, having either of those skills or both, ideally, is critical.
And Michael, while we have you here, there was one more question. Somebody had asked about how an MSL is often compared to a sales rep. Do you want to go into that a little bit and talk about the differences?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a good question. So the biggest thing, so when you think about a sales rep, right, their job is sales. So their job is to sell drug. So they are on commercial side of the company. MSL, as I indicated, are within medical affairs. So their job is there are some similarities in that they have territories. MSLs have territories similar to what sales reps do, but it's the information that they communicate or that they during their interaction with these physicians. That's the big difference. So for example, sales reps have to talk whenever they speak with a physician. They have to talk on label. They cannot say anything that's off label. MSLs, however, can speak off label if prompted by the physician. So once you get into a fellow's position, you'll hear the term proactive versus reactive, and although that everyone knows what those terms mean, but it has a different context, if you will, in the medical affairs or MSL setting. The job of the MSL is, again, not to sell drugs. The job of the MSL is to ensure that the physician has all the information about anything that it may be related to the drug or therapeutic area. And so when you look at something like rare diseases is kind of its own special thing. So there's a lot of what you call KOL development within rare diseases because, again, these diseases not being as common as the name implies, a lot of these physicians don't really put these diseases at the top of their differential when presented with patients who exhibit these symptoms. So a big part of an MSL's job, particularly in the rare disease space, is education, is KOL education. So they will do presentations, which, to be honest, I'm not sure how many sales reps will do presentations. I would think none, to be honest with you. But again, a big part of the MSL position is doing these presentations. So I guess in summary, what they talk about and what they do is very different. From both, from a training standpoint, because again, the PharmD is is the most common type of training, I would think, for someone to fill an MSL role. But it's also from a compliance standpoint as well, what they can talk about, because it's definitely a highly regulated area as far as communicating with KOLs. So I hope that answers the question. I don't know if there's anything else anyone else wants to add to that, but those are probably the biggest things.
Yeah, that was great, Michael. Thank you for that. The next question regarding how the MCPHS fellowship program differs from other academic program fellowships. So we can't really speak to other universities that have fellowships associated with them, but for MCP specifically, there's a couple of things. So being associated with a university, you are a faculty member there, and with that, there are certain requirements that you have to meet. So one thing being scholarship, right? You are required as a fellow to do an ongoing research project each year of your fellowship. And you're assigned an academic preceptor from the university, so they help you along with that, setting up ideas and actually carrying it out. And it's a great opportunity to get involved with maybe some students or other fellows and have that project going on throughout the year. Additionally, there's teaching as well. That's the second pillar. So you'll have teaching responsibilities at the university, which your academic preceptor will help you get involved with. And those opportunities can range from teaching a lecture in therapeutics to hosting a seminar to whatever it might be. Precepting students, that's another big one that a lot of fellows have the opportunity to get involved with. And then the third pillar is service. And this isn't something that is necessarily required, but it's something that's really suggested. So certain things like there's a walk to end Alzheimer's that's coming up that a lot of fellows are participating in, and other things like that out in the community. And those are things that each respective company is really involved in, mostly surrounding the disease states and the therapeutic areas that they work in. So those three pillars, scholarship, teaching, and service, are the three things that the MCP fellowship program really focuses on. And like I said, we can't speak for other universities, but I would imagine that it's much of the same because, like I said, you are considered faculty members at that university. So you have to abide by their three pillars that they want all their faculty members to get involved with.
So another question that we got is comparing an industry internship to a fellowship. And so what I would like to say to that is the fellowship is longer, obviously, than the internship. So you have the opportunity to take control and take leadership of more projects and kind of work with different people in different departments and see those projects through. Instead of just doing a rotation or internship that's maybe only a few weeks or a few months, you get to see a project from start to finish and really take ownership of what you're doing. And I think that's one of the benefits of doing a fellowship is that you can, so the benefits of doing a fellowship are that you can take ownership and take leadership and then either take those on to your future job and have those as good experiences on your CV.
All right, we got another question from Ruth. It's about what are some pros and cons of pursuing a postdoc fellowship instead of a direct entry-level position? And do you think that your career is greatly advanced through pursuing a 2-year fellowship? So in my opinion, yeah, I definitely would agree with that. One of the things you get through doing a fellowship in a network such as the MCPHS network is that you have connections to fellows who have completed that program. I know, for example, at Biogen, we have a lot of former fellows who stayed on and continued a position at Biogen once they completed the fellowship. So you have those contacts that you can reach out to, and you have just a large network of individuals who have gone through the same process that you can always reach out to for advice or anything else relating to, if you're looking for a new position, new job, you want to get someone else's input on maybe a different department. So it's definitely very helpful having gone through this experience in terms of networking. Another thing too is what Mike was touching on about what the fellowship actually offers. So we're not just working at the partner companies. You also have responsibilities through MCPHS. We teach courses, you may precept students, you do different scholarship activities. So those also are going to be things that are really going to help you professionally in terms of professional development and give you more things and experiences to speak to and to show for the 2 years that you've put into the fellowship. And also you can also talk about service. And we didn't talk about it in this webinar, but we have the MCPHS Fellows Network. So through that, you can also get involved in different networking opportunities, service events, academia opportunities. And in that, you can also have a lot of different projects and things that you can take ownership of to be able to speak to in a future interview or anything else that may help you get a different position or full-time position at a company after you completed the fellowship. So I definitely think it's really worth putting the time in for the 2 years because you're going to get so much more out of the experience being a fellow than just going straight into an entry-level position.
The next couple of questions are from George, so I can kind of address those as a group. So the first one, in terms of getting a chance to write or publish articles, that's something that all fellows are going to have the opportunity to be involved with, kind of how we were just touching on the teaching pillar of the fellowship and the scholarship pillar. So, depending on what you decide your project will be, you and your academic preceptor, you'll absolutely have the opportunity to write and publish articles. There's a second-year fellow right now here at Biogen who worked with a former fellow, and they actually just finished writing a manuscript and they got their article published. So that is something that's very common if you want to pursue that route for your scholarship requirement. And then in terms of the contractor positions, so essentially, fellows through MCP are considered contractors at their respective companies because we are employed by the university. With that being said, I think when people think of the industry, there's really two paths. The first is through a fellowship, and the second is through an entry-level position or a contractor position or whatever it might be. So what I would say, and one of the greatest benefits to a fellowship is that, you're not part of the head count at the company. So you really have the opportunity to rotate throughout different areas in the department. And, some fellowships are rotational based and others are not. So some are in a sense where you'll spend 3 months in this department and then move on to another group within that same department and so on and so forth. And others are kind of, will give you experiences throughout the whole functional area, but you're really moving along based on the needs of that department. So I think whichever way your program is set up, it really gives you an advantage because you get to see such a wide range of experiences across that area. And that's not necessarily something that you'll get to see if you take an entry-level position or if you're a contractor or something like that. Because, you'll be part of that headcount or you will have your daily responsibilities. So you won't necessarily have the opportunity to jump in with a different group and see what they're working on or get involved with other projects because you have your specific responsibilities that you have to focus on. So I think if you're, comparing the two, there's certainly pros and cons to both. But I think the thing that we can all agree on is that a fellowship really gives you a platform to see so many things and kind of gain experience in each of them. Nothing too major, but just enough to touch every piece and really understand how all of these different functions can come together with one common goal.
So we have another question, just based on fellows outside of Massachusetts having the same requirements for teaching, precepting, etc. And yes, that's a requirement for all MCPHS fellows. But as we kind of alluded to earlier, these requirements are pretty flexible. You can pursue whatever avenues that you're interested in with both your industry preceptor and your academic preceptor. So if you're not necessarily interested in teaching a class, you can help out in lab or precept students. Your experience really is what you make it. And you have a lot of options open to you. So most preceptors are very flexible. As long as you just ask and work with them, you can make it your own kind of program.
We have another question here. Kate, I don't know if you want to jump in here. Somebody asking about the message that medical payers in that program in HEOR, what is the actual message that they're providing to these payers?
I'm sorry, I didn't catch much of that, Mike. It was starting to break up pretty badly.
There was just a question about the U.S. Medical Payer Access Program and what is the message that they are providing to the payers.
So I don't have a lot of experience as far as those particular programs. My particular fellowship deals mostly with advertising promotion, and then we do have a rotation through marketing. But from my understanding, they're basically taking the information as far as our clinical trials and our outcomes data, and they're presenting it to payers such as the insurance companies, in a way that will hopefully get them either at us or put us in a better position as far as our products are concerned. If that helps.
Awesome. For sure. Thank you, Kate. And, to all you guys out there, we have fellows on the call tonight, but we certainly don't have all of the functional areas covered. So if you have a program-specific question, if you go onto the MCPHS Biopharmaceutical Industry Fellowship site, there is a brochure there. And the new one will be updated hopefully in early October. But if you see the fellows on there, feel free to reach out and ask a program-specific question if you want to get into the details. They'll be more than happy to help. Another question was regarding when to submit your applications and if you should only submit to those programs that invited you to the reception. So I would say typically that's how the process works, right? And we can go into those details more in the upcoming webinars, but for now I'll just say generally in the past, yes, if you're invited to a reception at mid-year, then if that's a positive experience, then that sort of gives you the green light to submit your application. But again, those two webinars that we have coming up at the end of the month and in early October will go into much more detail surrounding that.
So I just wanted to take a quick minute and address the question we got regarding the competitiveness of the fellowship program. I feel like as a fellow, it's one of the main questions I get as far as interns that rotate through my program. And what I will say is that it's incredibly competitive and it's not going to hit you until you walk into the conference center for mid-year. But what I want you to take away from that is that as far as your CVs and your resumes are concerned, that's just the first step at getting your foot in the door. And it really does pay off to hone in on those interviewing skills, whether it be a face-to-face interview or even just practicing your over-the-phone interview skills. Because I know a lot of companies, especially within the MCPHS program, we do a lot of phone interviews first to decide if we're going to request interviews with these candidates at mid-year. And I know it sounds silly, but even taking the time to get dressed in the morning and put yourself together before you have that interview can make a world of difference. So just keep that in mind as you're preparing for the whole mid-year experience.
Awesome. Thank you, Kate. Emily, if you're still on the call, we have a couple of questions specifically for you. The first one, just a general question, where do you see yourself in 3 to 5 years? And then the second question was surrounding your particular program and that you rotate through many different departments. And if you're able to spend a lot of time in each department, and if you feel like you have enough time in that department to learn what's going on and have a good understanding. I'm not sure if you're still on the call, Emily. If you are, you might be on mute.
Oh no, I was on mute.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Thank you for the questions. I will start with where do I see myself in 5 years? I see myself managing people. I see myself on a cross-functional team working to execute projects and working in research and development. Supply chain is a great way to get exposure to a lot of different areas. You lead teams, so I see myself leading teams. Maybe it's something clinical. I like the clinical protocol development. And yeah, I guess, who knows, the sky's the limit. And the second question was the rotations, the rotational aspect of the Pfizer Fellowship Program. So the first year is rotational, and you rotate through a large number of areas, all through research and development. So I think we rotated through 16 different groups, which sounds like a lot. Sometimes it was as short as a week or a couple days. Sometimes it was longer for 3 weeks or 4 weeks. So the rotations we do start with API manufacturing. So there's a lot of chemistry. You learn about new technologies and flow chemistry and developing the API. And then you do formulation development, and you learn about biologics, so pharmaceutical research and development, and like vaccines and cell banks. And then you do drug product development, which is the solid dosage forms, which Pfizer has an expertise in the solid dosage forms. And then you also do chemistry manufacturing controls, which is the regulatory affairs aspect of the investigational products. You do CRD, which is chemistry research development, and that's where you scale up the lab API manufacturing and put it into large-scale batch manufacturing. Additionally, you rotate through clinical, so the clinicians are the people who develop the clinical protocols and are the owners of the clinical protocol. Sometimes they're called clinical scientists, and there's a lot of PharmDs in that area as well. We rotate through clinical supply operations, which is the distribution and logistics and packaging of investigational products. Additionally, with quality assurance is throughout the entire drug development process, and there are checkpoints for quality assurance throughout, and you actually learn a lot about mergers and acquisitions and how to maintain the quality standards when Pfizer acquires a new company. And then, of course, supply chain is another one. And if you are interested in one area or another as you go through the modules, you are able to meet those contacts and spend more time with people and learn from those people. And in some of those modules, you do have deliverables or a longitudinal project. For example, in the packaging aspect, we did a miniature new hire orientation or a new hire training. We learned how to be a packaging coordinator. But it's exposure to a lot of things. It's drinking from a fire hose at times, although it really gives you a holistic aspect of how drugs are developed.
So I think for the sake of time, we're going to wrap up here. It's just about 9 o'clock. There were a few questions that were submitted beforehand and a few here that we didn't get a chance to address. So what we can do is put together a document with just some, a lot of the questions that are being asked are very common questions, some of which are specific to the application process. So that's certainly something that hopefully we'll cover in plenty of detail during the next 2 webinars. But for the others, we can circle a FAQs page that addresses a lot of these questions and make sure that you guys get the answers to all of them. And of course, at the next 2 webinars, feel free to ask any questions as well. So with that being said, again, I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and I hope this was helpful for you guys. And please register for the next upcoming webinar, and we will talk to you at that point. So thank you, everybody.
Thanks, guys.